do you aim to deliver for farmers as the new Minister for Agriculture?
Well, there's a number of key priorities as I head into my term now as a Minister for Agriculture. And obviously nitrates is one of the biggest ones, not just for the 7,000 nitrates farmers all around the country, but in relation to its impact on all other farmers in relation to land availability and beyond, and the broader impact on our rural economy. That the nitrates derogation is absolutely critical. We have this special derogation from a rule in Europe for very good reason because of our pasture-based system. We are investing really heavily in improving our water quality and in addressing issues in that space. That is a top priority for us as a government, to continue to support farmers to do that, and to establish a cabinet subcommittee to make sure everybody from local authorities, Nisca, Éireann and EPA, who have a role to play in water quality as well as farmers, all play their part. And we see the impact of the water safety or the water scheme coming in now, the €60 million EIP, starting to make that investment a real key element. So the nitrates derogation is the number one priority for this year, as well as CAP reform. In 17 months' time, we'll have the presidency of the EU. I attended my first meeting of the Agfish Council of Ministers yesterday, and in 17 months' time, if I'm still Minister, I'll be chairing that body. And that'll be at the second half of 2026, when we're at the critical phase of renegotiating the CAP. I see a great opportunity now to use the next 17 months to communicate with my colleagues, to build relationships there, and to let them know what are the key building blocks and foundations that we need in Ireland in a reform CAP, and use my position then as chair to help deliver a new CAP, get that over the line with the Commissioner, and work closely with Commissioner Hansen, and deliver real simplification for our farmers.
Just on the nitrates derogation, what do you believe Irish farmers need to do to retain that?
I believe Irish farmers are doing it. They're investing in our water quality. They've, I've made the point to the Commission officials when they've been out here previously. One of the things we need to have is we need to have our farmers having viable farms that make enough money that they can invest back in the environmental measures. And that's really key here. You know, farmers can't go green environmentally if they're in the red financially. And we saw that on the farm we brought them to, a dairy farm, a fifth generation dairy farm in Kildare, that had invested €100,000 between low emission slurry spreading, equipment, increased storage, buffers around their water courses. Farmers are making great strides in this area. And across government, we want to make sure that all elements are doing their bit, like, as I say, our local authorities, Uisce, Éireann and EPA as well, that we address our water quality challenges so that we can see an improvement in our water quality. And I believe we will get there, just as we've turned the dial in relation to our emissions, and we're reducing our emissions while still producing our top quality food. Farmers can do the same with water quality, and allow us to hold on to that very important derogation.
Do you believe it makes a difference that you come from a farming family in this role?
Look, I don't know. Some people are saying that in media terms. I don't want to overstate that. It does mean I can hit the ground running. The fact that I've been a Minister of State in the last 4.5 years in the department is also a huge advantage. I know some of the people involved. I know what works well. I know things that I'd like to see working better. Of course, look, I think more than anything, farming is my DNA. It's who I am. It's what I was raised as. I was raised in a family where being a farmer was part of your identity. You identify yourself as a farmer. I don't think if you're a structural engineer and you're asked the question, who are you, that you say I'm a structural engineer. But if you're a farmer, you do. So I get that. That is me. It is me and my wife and our 4 young kids on our farm at home in South Kildare, where I still have beef and tillage. So it helps. But that alone won't decide whether I'm a good minister or not. I have to get stuck into the detail. I have to work closely with people. I have to build relationships. And I'll do that because I'm determined to deliver for our agriculture sector.
And what will you do differently than, say, your predecessor in the role?
I thought my predecessor, Charlie McConalogue, worked hard and faced many different challenges. I suppose from my perspective, I have to be myself and in my own way, and every minister is different. But also you can be defined by the challenges that you face at a time. So I do think the EU presidency gives me an opportunity in my term, if I get to serve a full 5-year term. That term will largely be defined by how I manage that EU presidency and being chair of the Council of Ministers in Europe in 17 months' time. But also the relationship I have with farmers, whether they put their trust in me. I think I'm starting from a good point, but I wouldn't be complacent about that. They'll judge me on delivery. They'll judge me on my understanding of the issues. And, like being here in Leitrim today, I hope to be in every nook and cranny of the country, meeting farmers from all different enterprises in all different sectors, seeing exactly the challenges they face, but also recognising the opportunities. And we have great opportunities. I'm really optimistic for agriculture. Not everyone always is. When you talk to them about it, we tend to be negative on ourselves. We are going through a period of change, but I want to be able to add value to farmers' incomes. I want to be able to make sure that we support farmers in the challenges they face, so that we can address key issues like the area of succession. That is such a concern for farmers. To me, at the heart of that topic and that issue is viability. We have to make sure our farms are viable and that there's enough of an income there for the next generation to want to take on the role.
And you mentioned your track record in the Department of Agriculture, but there were issues within some of the schemes in relation to payments, particularly acres. What are you going to do differently this time around?
Oh, acres is really, really challenging. It's not acceptable to me that we have a scheme that certain farmers haven't been paid back from 2023. They entered into a contract. We have got to fix the anomalies there. And if I was to, you asked me a point, what would I do differently? Acres is too complex. There are too many actions. There are too many different systems needed for a computer system to be administered. We have got to get back to basics. And for me, a reform cap delivering real simplification for farmers actually means less schemes. I think we need to find an easier way to get the money to farmers, to support them in their food production system, make sure to get as good a return for their produce as they can, get them the supports, and let farmer supports be what they say on the tin. Let them support farmers, but with much less bureaucracy and red tape. And I don't think you can do that on the one hand and then have increasingly complex schemes. We have got to make them more streamlined and more straightforward and have less of them.
And in relation to Mercosur, obviously, when you were in Brussels, you highlighted some of the issues that you've identified for Irish farmers. How much of a fight do you think you have in your hands with that now?
Well, I just feel I have a very strong responsibility as a representative of the Irish government to articulate our issues and our concerns. We are a small open nation. We really benefit from trade. Irish farmers really benefit from trade. I know this as a Minister of State who had responsibility for new market development. But the fact of the matter is, Mercosur is wrong on a number of different levels in its current form, and that's why we oppose it, because it looks to, do a deal with countries that don't have the same standard as us. And yes, we have our SPS checks and we have increased legal text now from Europe that is being analysed, but we are working closely with those other countries who share opposition, who share concerns around Mercosur, because normally it's not in my nature to be against a trade deal. Trade deals are good for us. We benefit largely from them. But on this one, not only is there an economic hit for our beef sector, which is one element, but there is also the fact, how do you ask farmers to take on more environmental conditionality down the line under EU rules, when on the other hand then they're letting produce in that comes from countries that don't have those same standards? That's how you lose the room with farmers. And everything I'm determined to do, we will continue to have very strong, as a government, we will have very strong ambition in the area of climate. We have legally binding targets that we will hit and we will work very hard to hit. Agriculture will play its part in that element. But the only way we get to do that is by bringing farmers with us. And the likes of Mercosur, for me, is a lightning rod that is a very big risk of losing the room with farmers.
You made a lot of promises to young farmers during your election campaign. How are you going to deliver on those now?
I don't think I made loads of promises. I just recognise the fact that they want a really good succession scheme. They want to have supports for them to go in. I talked about the fact that I don't believe a simple farm retirement scheme is really the way to go, because I talk about the fact that the old retirement scheme had farmers at 57, 58 years of age walking across the yard carrying a bucket, afraid someone would see them, that they might lose their retirement scheme. That old scheme had language in it that said the farmer needed to be banished from the farm effectively. That's completely against everything we do. A farmer close to 60 years of age has a lifetime of knowledge and built up that they can pass on to the next generation. And I want to see a mentorship style scheme where we can harness that for the older farmer who wants to take a step back. Farmers don't ever really retire. If they want to, fine. But if they don't want to retire, but they just want to take less of a role, there's a way we can support that transition with the next generation. So, the commitments I made in that space was absolutely identifying how important succession is, that we get more young farmers in. But to do that, we have to have a viable, financially viable sector.
Farmers have had a very difficult start to 2025 with weather conditions. We've seen some farm organisations ask for inspections, for example, to be suspended while we have these current weather conditions. Do you think that the department and perhaps you as Minister can be a little bit more sympathetic to farmers in these weather conditions?
Absolutely. So in my last term, one of my responsibilities was the area of farm safety and farmer mental health and well-being. And I'm acutely aware at times of huge pressure, like in a storm or the aftermath of a storm, or where we have farmers here, like in Leitrim today, that are without power, are trying to tend to livestock, have cows and ewes going to calve and yein very soon, or trying to milk cows. Like, inspections can come at the wrong time and put a farmer who's under pressure, under even more pressure. That is not what we want. I've talked to my officials. We obviously suspended all inspections last Friday with Storm Owen as part of that red weather warning. There are some farmers who need inspections to go ahead so they can receive their payments. So it is a balancing act. I don't want a flat blanket ban on all inspections, because that will delay payments for certain farmers, and that's the last thing we want to do. So what I've asked my inspectors to do is to do it on a case-by-case basis, obviously to recognise if the farmer they contact is without power and isn't up for an inspection, then that would be okay, but that judgment will be taken on a case-by-case basis. Like, we have some young farmer inspections. It's a desktop at a kitchen table during the day here. You know, that is quite possible, and those young farmers will want to get that payment. So where the farmer is happy for them to continue in the area, they will do so. But obviously we're taking a very pragmatic approach, and I'm really determined that we have a very compassionate approach to inspections. We have an EU requirement. We handle €2 billion of EU funds. We have to be able to account and audit for them, obviously, but we can do that in a way that puts the farmer at the heart of it, and that'll be a key determination for me in my time in the department.